Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading from Breathe Underwater by Anise Storm and Taylor L. Ray, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me for Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Damian. I'd had a knot in my chest from the moment I first passed the battered "Welcome to Texas" sign on the side of the highway. Leave it to the LED lights on my C8 vet to key right in on the damn thing. I didn't need any reminders about where I was headed, and I sure as hell didn't need any from where I'd been, especially when it included this godforsaken place, Dallas, the Big D. It'd been a place I once knew well, although I'm sure a hell of a lot had changed in the 13 years since I'd left. I could still remember that night. It was a lot like this one, dark and stormy. After midnight, there was nothing lit up on this pitch black highway outside of the sky, which had opened above me about an hour ago. Vicious streaks of lightning had raced across the black canvas overhead, and loud rumbles of booming thunder and torrential rain had followed. I had finally outrun the storms, only to be left with the remnants. There was still some rain, but it was more of a steady drizzle that made me have to annoyingly keep my wipers on. I should have known that even Mother Nature would find some fucked up way to welcome me back to the state. I hated this place. I'd never wanted to move here, even back then when I was a teenager. I gave my parents the hardest time about everything, and relocating from New Mexico had been another one of those things. I'd known then that there was nothing for me there. Outside of a few memories of the city, most of my life there had sucked royally. Time wasn't the only thing that had sucked, but I digressed. Shaking my head, I refused to go there. Evelyn Sheridan needed to be the furthest thing from my mind. Evie, I mumbled to myself as I remembered the dark-haired temperist with espresso eyes. They'd been hard to forget once we moved from Dallas to New Orleans. For months, even the chicory coffee that my mother drank by the pot reminded me of her. Things hadn't ended well between the two of us, and I refused to think about why. Patrick Sheridan had been a distant memory to me for so long, and I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of taking up more than a few seconds of my thoughts. It wasn't like I was returning to this place to reconnect with those best left in the past. I was there to play my part in resurrecting something much different. You're being reassigned, Solito, Jack had told me just a few short weeks ago. Jack Winston was my boss in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. As a highly decorated FBI special agent, I spent the last 10 years in New York City undercover with the organization who had ties to the Cosa Nostra. My maternal great-grandfather had actually immigrated to the United States from Sicily back in the 19th century. While I didn't know whether he actually had anything to do with the Sicilian Mafia, the possibility existed, so I was able to draw off that. We have an assignment for you, Solito, the same man had told me just days after I graduated from the academy. And that is? I'd asked, and then had been sorry that I had done so. You're going undercover with the mob. At that time, I'd been ready to do whatever was needed. I spent the first year researching everything I could about the group of men I was about to join. Many of them were monsters, but others were guys that had gotten caught up in the same world that I was trying so hard to willingly insert myself into. It started off with me frequenting places where those mobsters were known to be, and over the course of the next year or two, I was able to gain the trust of those needed, and eventually I was accepted as one of them. From there, my life changed so drastically. My name, history, and dreams had all changed. I lived and breathed everything that those men did, and while leaving everything in my previous life behind. My past was completely wiped out, and another had been put in its place. I was forced to pretend to be the illegitimate son of one of those men, while my own father had been the complete opposite. Giovanni Solito wasn't half the man that Matthew Barrett had been. I did what I needed to do in order to fit in, and eventually it involved me doing something I never thought I would do to another living being. I had never anticipated being a murderer, but it was what I had become, and not just once. Time and time again, I had been made to prove my worth. It was either my life or whoever I was tasked with snuffing out, and I tried to alleviate my guilt by remembering that these unfortunate men were despicable and dangerous. It often helped in the moment, but when I was alone, the guilt was like a heavy weight sitting on my chest. There'd been so many nights that I laid there, wanting to turn a blade or gun on myself, but I'd been the one to place myself into this world, and if it wasn't me taking these bad men out, someone else would. I wouldn't wish that kind of darkness on anyone else, so I did what I needed to do. You want me to go where? I'd ask incredulously at Jack's words a few weeks ago. They're about to resurrect themselves in Texas. He'd started to explain, and I remembered in my earlier research that the Sicilian Mafia hadn't had a huge presence in the state for a few decades or longer. Where in Texas? I'd asked in response, and I could still remember the string of curses that erupted at a single word. Dallas. For fuck's sake. I hadn't been anywhere close to the city since I was forced to flee in the dead of the night so many years earlier. If you know what they're about to do, can't you just stop them? I knew it wasn't that simple, but I honestly wanted to provide any alternative other than the one that I knew would happen. I had to answer to two different organizations, the FBI and the Sicilian Mafia. My life wasn't my own to do with whatever I wanted, so here I was. We needed them to do more than just set up shop, he replied. We've reason to believe that they've crawled into bed with Mexico. From there, he'd gone on to detail how powerful cartels from the south of the border had entered into business partnerships with several criminal networks, including Sicilian and Italian crime families. Drug production was booming in Mexico, and by joining forces with the mob, they were able to traffic their drugs in fresh markets that needed new providers. It was beneficial for both sides. This involved one of the families I'd been working under for almost a decade. If the two groups were successful in that partnership, it would spell even more trouble for the international drug trade. Europe was already second behind the United States in cocaine demand, and the need was only skyrocketing. If the cartels managed to get their product from those Mexican labs into southern Italy, the drug would disappear from there as they were distributed to places around the globe. Having a more local presence than New York or Calabria was key for them. It was also for the FBI, so I was reassigned to Dallas, so I could essentially be close enough to the action to get what I needed for the United States to disrupt their plans. Police had already seized more than 20,000 kilos of cocaine, 12 kilos of heroin, numerous vehicles, cash, and weapons, but they wanted more. That had barely been a drop in the bucket, considering how much more was out there. This was a multi-organizational sting that included agents from the FBI, DEA, and ICE. Is there not someone else that can assist? Maybe someone already working with the State Bureau of an Investigation? You'll have help from the FBI if needed, but you're the best agent for this job. You already know the men we're watching, and you wouldn't require an in with them. I knew that Jack was right, but I didn't like it then, and I still don't now. I shook my head and adjusted my wipers as I drove into heavier rain. They moved back and forth on the rain-slickened glass, and the now constant swishing threatened to lull me to sleep. I could have taken a flight to Dallas, but I wanted to bring my car with me. In the life that I was forced to live, I barely accumulated anything, and this car had been the only thing of value to me. This nearly day-long trip was torture enough. I often stayed up for days at a time, and the lack of sleep did little to slow me down. As long as I had adrenaline from something to fuel me, I was fine. What was sleep anyway? It was something I could do plenty of once I was dead. Living the life that I was, that day might come sooner than I think. I'd managed to make it to Little Rock before the fatigue caught up to me. I pulled off the interstate and got a room at a hotel so I could get a few hours of sleep. After some shut-eye, I ate a greasy burger and fries, then I was back on the road. Now I was starting to see more signs for the Dallas Metroplex area. It was likely the reason I had a sour taste that I couldn't get rid of. I had thought at first that it was indigestion from the fast food, but I knew it went deeper. Thank fuck I actually have a place to go once I get there. The family had spread me and the others across the city, and I would be staying in Uptown. I had already rented out a fully furnished loft in a building that had once been an old paper warehouse. The small unit was good enough for what I was there to do. The sooner I could get the FBI the information that they needed, the sooner I could get the hell out of there and return to New York City. Brooklyn had become more of a home to me than New Orleans, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Albuquerque, and all the other places I had once lived. It sure as hell beat Dallas. I raked my hand through my hair as the skyline appeared in the distance. If you saw one, you saw them all, and I just hoped this assignment would be like all the others and not anything worse.